Monday, January 23rd, 2023, the Monday following the divisional round of the playoffs. There is a Final Four set in the NFL. We have a lot to get to, 4 games to talk about, 4 winners, and of course, 2 upcoming games, and then the ultimate game. But we do understand here at the SB Nation NFL show that you may or may not have seen news floating around as the weekend began before divisional weekend. And there's no good or comfortable way to say it. It's a very awkward time for some of us here at SB Nation, a very difficult time. Rob Stat Square is a great friend of ours and somebody who we love very dearly. And obviously, we did not have an episode last Friday. We don't know exactly what things will be like moving forward. We don't know a lot of things. What we do know is we love the people that are here right now, and we're going to try to talk about football as best as we can. So apologies if that was awkward, but we're trying to get through it all together. My name is RJ Ochoa. The fantastic Rachel Prevet, as always, is on the ones and twos with me here in the co-pilot seat, as he always is, the one and only Pete Sweeney. Pete, happy Monday after divisional weekend to you, my friend.
Yep. Divisional weekends in the books. We are headed straight for conference championship Sunday. And, I think there's a lot to be excited about to talk about in the NFL. Really briefly on stats. I know that we're keeping it brief here, but it's going to suck to not work with them anymore. But over my 10 years, I've never had the opportunity to work with someone who was as passionate, as hardworking. And I think a lot of these times when someone parts with a company, it feels a little, like this is the end and it's a really sad thing. But for me, the sad part is us not being able to work with him anymore. If you see, he's easy to access on Twitter. A lot of people, I think, in that situation maybe would have shut it down for the year. But the 49ers are still alive. He's still spewing his takes. They're easily findable. And I think the bumming part for us is we won't get to have that guy on our team anymore. And of course we wish him luck. We're going to stay in touch, but we're going to try our best to carry on with the SB Nation NFL show, and I think that's what the people want to hear. They want to hear us talk about these 4 teams.
Yeah, I think that's really well said. And again, full disclosure for the audience, we don't know. I don't know what's going to happen to the shows Stats was a part of here. You said it really well, Pete. Stats is the most talented person I've ever worked with. No offense to anybody else here. And certainly the most driven. I've always been so jealous of how good he is at all of this. And so I'll root for Stats always. However that kind of winds up being the case. Super bummed that Stats has, a lot to be pumped about, obviously, today. As a reminder, as we kind of fully set the table in the way we're sort of stumbling through here on the SB Nation NFL show, a reminder that this show is brought to you by DraftKings. DraftKings Sportsbook is an official sports betting partner of the NFL. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app today and use code SBNFL for a special offer when you sign up. That is code SBNFL only at DraftKings Sportsbook. And Pete, again, like kind of in the spirit of what we're talking about, I love the people I work with. I love my life in this sense. I love Stats. I love you. I love Rachel. And I love our third leg here on the SB Nation NFL show on Monday Football Monday as we get set for the conference championships and the Super Bowl. Because Pete, you might be busy. We don't know what's going to happen. Your team, 5 straight AFC championship games at home. You're used to this time of year being a little bit busy. So we want to divvy up the workload a little bit. In an effort to do that, Jeremy Reisman from Pride of Detroit is going to be hanging out with us for a while. Jeremy, welcome to Monday Football Monday. The first words I want to say to you, I love you, because I do. I love you very much, Jeremy.
Oh, thanks, RJ. Appreciate it. It's honestly an honor to be here during the playoffs, because it's one of the most fun times to talk about football right now. And really, I think we might be down to the best 4 teams in the NFL, which doesn't always happen in the playoffs. So some exciting things to talk about from last weekend, and next weekend should be really, really fun too.
So, Jeremy, you run our Detroit Lions site, Pride of Detroit. You can be found on Twitter at Detroit on Lion. We're about to kind of dive deep into the 4 games that we saw. Your first word, just one word to describe what you saw over the course of the weekend.
Separation, I would say, because I do feel like we kind of saw some teams that maybe didn't deserve to be in the divisional round get booted. Not pointing fingers here, okay. But it does, like I said, it does feel like the best 4 teams kind of made it to these semifinals at this point. So separation, that's what I'll go with.
That's well said. And I say this in full respect to our guest. It took me a little while to come around on the Bengals. I didn't know what to make of last year's playoff run. I kind of thought it was a little bit of a Cinderella thing. The 0-2 start was really tough, but holy crap, all credit in the world to Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, specifically Zach Taylor. I don't know how Zach Taylor is flying so low under the radar from Cincy Jungle. John Sheeran is here to talk about the once again AFC Championship game bound Cincinnati Bengals. John, congratulations to the Who Day crowd, the new America's team. Why not? At this point, who cares about the Super title?
Welcome, holy crap. Yeah, I remember coming on here like before week 2 or whatnot, or maybe after week 2, and is everyone out on Zach Taylor now? Well, now he's on a bar stool at midnight off of a playoff win, leading Who Day chance at the game ball for a local bar. So a lot can change in 4 months.
What was the most satisfying part about Sunday, John? Was it kind of proving that last year wasn't a fluke? Was it, Jeremy used the word separation. I think there's a very clear separation between the top of the AFC hierarchy. It's the Chiefs and the Bengals, and then there's a gap. There's very clearly a gap before the Bills, whether the Mafia wants to admit it or not. Like, what was your biggest takeaway from a satisfaction standpoint?
Well, I mean, the Bengals proved that they were the more complete team, 100%. Going into that environment with those elements, if you had told me that Joe Burrow had a clean game, 2 touchdowns, 240 yards or whatever, like I would have expected that. That's fine. If you had told me that the Bengals defense came up with a good plan to limit the Bills offense and what they do well, like I would have expected that as well. If you had told me that the Bengals team who didn't really rush the ball very well to end the season, even with a full starting 5 offensive linemen, with 3 reserve offensive linemen, figuring out the concepts and the schemes to work best with these 3 new pieces to put up 172 rushing yards against, albeit not a great run defense for the Bills, but still, the fact that they couldn't do it, they ran to a literal wall to end the season in that regard in their offense, to pull out that great of a game running the ball and to have this complete complementary football aspect with it, it completely shocked me, and I think it shocked a lot of people with the Bengals, and it turned that game into what probably should have been a 1-score game into a 3-score game, and they just blew the doors off the Bills for 60 minutes.
The quote that's going around right now is Joe Burrow and how Chiefs fans and Bills fans are going to have to get their refunds from the Atlanta game, and just another chapter of Joe Cool in the NFL. How much of a motivating factor maybe was it, you think, for Cincinnati, with everyone just assuming, hey, you're going to have these two teams in a neutral site in Atlanta, not even thinking about the Bengals or really any seed, what would be 3 through 7?
Yeah, I think there was the whole discussion about the coin flip or the coin toss possibility at the beginning of the playoffs, and then there was the neutral site aspect, and we can dive into that for hours, but we don't have to. I think the main thing was that the NFL released the press release about the 50,000 tickets sold for that potential neutral site game, and the fact that the tickets were 4 times more expensive than any of the other presale options, and the NFL clearly wouldn't hate the fact that they could make all that money based off of something that they probably wanted to go to in the near future here. So the fact that it was pushed like that, it made it more of a motivating factor compared to the fact that there's 3 other presale options that are available. There was a presale option for a Bengals home game in the AFC Championship should if Jacksonville had beaten Kansas City. That was a possibility, but obviously that wasn't being pushed by the NFL in that regard. So the Bengals just have leveraged every single possibility or every single minor or major slight against them into just an extra motivating factor, and they've just majored in that for the past 2 years now, and this was just the latest example.
Jeremy, I know you're going to ask the next question, but I love that in a way. The NFL wanted a certain thing, and the Bengals prevented them from getting that. It reminds me of Steve Austin versus Vince McMahon in the 90s and 2000s. We want this for the corporation, the NFL, and here you have this renegade that's ruining all the NFL plans. But anyway, Jeremy, I'll throw it to you.
Well, yeah, I want to go back to what RJ said about making sure this is a real Bengals. Last year wasn't a fluke. We don't see a lot of quick turnarounds in the NFL, at least not ones that last a long time. So I guess, is the timeline of how quickly this team turned into a powerhouse in the AFC surprising to you at all?
Yes and no. I think there were obviously major questions about not only Zach Taylor, but Lou Anarumo, and just the legitimacy of both of them as coaches after the 2020 season. Now, obviously, Burrow going down to finish that season wasn't ideal, but you didn't have a great idea about what either one did well as a offensive and defensive play caller. So the fact that they were able to just acquire all these pieces personnel-wise in basically 2 or 3 off seasons, hit on most, if not all, of their major important draft picks. And now we have Jackson Carman, who's looking like a capable left tackle after he was labeled as a major bust for a second-round pick. They haven't really missed in rebuilding this thing, and that's what's made it turn around so quickly, but also the fact that all these personnel pieces fit perfectly with what the coaches want to do, and the fact that the coaches have managed and kind of adjusted their schemes and what they want to do to the personnel that they have fit despite some injuries and whatnot. It's definitely accelerated it. But when you have that guy at quarterback in Joe Burrow, and you've developed these weapons, these homegrown weapons from these draft picks with the same coaching staff for 4 years, it definitely makes it easier to accelerate the process.
John, is there a I don't want to say like a relaxing sort of disposition, but I say this as somebody whose team got bounced in the divisional round again. Like, it is such a high pressure situation when the Cowboys in the divisional round, because right, like they can't get past it, right? So there's this like naturally, high intensity associated with that. Is there like a piece to like, this isn't like the Cinderella run that was happening. And again, like the Cinderella part of this has been disproven as we've talked about here, but like this specific team has been here before. Like, it's not what was the tweet the Bengals sent out last year after the Raiders win? Was it send the text message, right? Because like the Bengals had not had a playoff win in the era of texting or something like that. Like, all of those things are gone. Like, this is now just normal. Like, is there a calming effect to that in your mind?
I think so. Like, after every playoff win, there's just an extra ounce of confidence that gets added to the equation. Like, Burrow said after the Raiders win, like, this is like the standard now. Like, obviously it's a monumental win in the history and the lore of the city and the franchise and everything, but he came into the league being a champion in college, and like that was his, whether or not it's outlandish from the beginning or whatnot, that was like the expectation for him to come in and to completely change the franchise for the better. So from that moment, like when they beat the Raiders, like they established the confidence in themselves that they can handle these stages, and they certainly have proven everyone right in that sense.
I guess when you think back to this, it was connecting Burrow with Jamar Chase. As you think back, how important was that decision to go with this 1-2 punch in what has been a really quick, as Jeremy sort of alluded to, trajectory for this team into the elite?
Well, it helps when you have two bona fide and like number one receivers out there on the boundary. It just makes the whole offense kind of go. And God, I still remember the debates about him versus Penei Sewell, and I feel like Sewell is a phenomenal player, phenomenal left tackle. The Bengals at that point in their offseason, like they needed that explosive weapon at receiver. T. Higgins was coming off a very solid rookie season, and he's developed very nicely, but you weren't sure how quickly and how strongly he was going to develop into a vertical threat. Chase's presence has really just opened up the offense. Obviously, we saw it last year with all the deep shots, and now they've kind of evolved his role into more of an intermediary underneath kind of option as the defenses have adjusted. It just really makes the offense completely multi-dimensional, and obviously the chemistry factor matters as well. Like having that history with him and Burrow going back to 2018, it definitely doesn't hurt, but like he was so needed to make this offense take the next step, and now you're seeing him break 20 tackles a game as his underneath option while still having that explosion and verticality aspect to his game.
Not to look too far ahead, but obviously next week now we got an AFC rematch in the championship game. What's different about this Bengals team, obviously, other than the fact that they're not considered as much of an underdog as they were last year?
Well, I think we still need to see more of a sample size with this offensive line and how they can hold up in pass protection. They did a great job against the Bills, but obviously the Bills, they've been such a much less effective pass rushing unit ever since Von Miller went down, right? You had Greg Rousseau as a power rusher, and he had a couple of wins against Keem Adeniji, but Shaq Lawson and AJ Ebenezer, they didn't really give Jackson Carman that much of a challenge. You had, I think, injuries along the interior of the Bills' defensive line. So you have Ted Karras now is playing on maybe a bad knee entering this game, and that's something to monitor. That would be the fourth injury that this Bengals offensive line has suffered. So Frank Clark, Chris Jones, really good pass rushers. It's going to be tough to keep them off of Burrow for this entire game, but Burrow has done a great job of not turning those pressures into sacks. And that was a huge problem for him last year, and it led to that 9-sack game against the Titans that they somehow managed to overcome. So he's doing a good job of getting out of the pocket and getting the ball out quicker. This Bengals offensive line now hopefully has more cohesion now in their second game, starting with this specific 5. So just that, the fact that you don't have now 20 or 30 pressures allowed in a single game, it allows for more consistent and sustainable offense. And with a defense that continues to prove itself against these top quarterbacks like Lou Anarumo in his mad scientist ways, like he just managed to take away your best playmakers, if not for the entire game, for the moments that matter. So all those things clicking just makes a more complete team.
John Sheeran from Cincy Jungle, thank you so much for joining us here on Monday Football Monday. I'm rooting for you. I hope the Bengals win the Super Bowl. So if that means anything, I mean, at least you have that.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah, I don't know if we necessarily need to go in that direction this early.
I think we do.
Monday, RJ?
I think we do. I'm
Yeah.
in a high level sort of coping situation, so I need to go whatever direction I need to go in. We need to talk about the Bills side of this. Obviously, there were only 4 games. That is a luxury that it gives us the opportunity that for that. Jeremy, I want to go to you first because Pete and I were very critical of Josh Allen last week. This is the SB Nation NFL show, so a bit of a national thing,
Sure.
but it does feel like on a national level. Obviously I'm a little bit jaded as a Dak Prescott supporter, but like Josh Allen is not going to catch heat for this. The same way he didn't catch heat for the 3 turnovers last week, the same way he didn't catch heat for all the turnovers all season long.
You're probably right, but he deserves plenty. He was not good in this game, and his offensive line didn't do him a ton of favors. There wasn't a running game to help him much at all, but that's something that usually kind of he spurs. Like he wasn't much of an offensive threat running the ball or passing the ball. He wasn't very accurate in this game. And he's still an elite quarterback in this league, and much of the reason why they were where they were in the playoffs. But yeah, I think this was not his best performance. And now, last year's playoff exit was kind of fluky with the crazy overtime game and all that sort of stuff. But this one I think is more directly on him, and so he's going to have to answer some questions for himself. But you're right. I think he's reached kind of an untouchable level right now, and maybe if years upon years and he still hasn't reached an AFC championship game and or a Super Bowl, maybe then some of that criticism that someone like Dak gets will creep in. But yeah, I think it's still early enough in his season where the stuff that he does before, I guess, the divisional round kind of carries his reputation right now.
Josh Allen is not a top 5 quarterback in the NFL.
Whoa. Okay, that's a little. Who are the 5 then? Who are 5 ahead of him? Mahomes, Burrow, understandably.
Patrick Mahomes and Joe Burrow.
Jalen Hurts.
Jalen Hurts. And then, you can, in my opinion, make a case for Trevor Lawrence. And I would even go as far as to say that I would take Herbert. I understand it's been disappointing for him too, but I put a lot of that on the coaching. This is someone who has had a coach in place and a consistent staff, and you have felt good about it in Buffalo. Now, I don't know if that necessarily means Allen can't work his way back up to that. You also have other quarterbacks in the league, like a Dak, like a Lamar, when they're healthy. And I just think in the grand consensus of things, it's hard to put him in that mix. And I said this, look, I got the NFC this weekend really wrong. I thought the Giants would cover, and I thought the Cowboys would win. That was very wrong. I got the AFC right in the preseason. I said, why are the Buffalo Bills the Super Bowl favorite after they can't win anything? Josh Allen has proven time and time
petty little
again.
retweet, by the way, at Arrowhead Pride.
Time and time again, petty little retweet. One person picking the Chiefs. Everyone's saying that the AFC West is going to go another way. And I was mad not only for Kansas City, and I said this, RJ, I said this over and over again. I'm mad for Cincinnati. Why did Cincinnati, who went to the Super Bowl, who beat the team that was beaten by the Bills that beat the Bills, why are they not getting any kind of respect at all? I was wondering, the Bills have shown year after year after year after year they cannot win the big game. Josh Allen cannot win the big game. He doesn't have the poise to do it. Patrick Mahomes has. Patrick Mahomes won a title. Joe Burrow whoops Mahomes every time. But these two teams were behind the Bills. Why? And who's left when you get to Championship Sunday? And for me, this is a situation where, I think you're right, RJ. There are quarterbacks now that are getting criticism. Sometimes Lamar got a little bit of that. Dak certainly gets a little bit of that.
Cousins.
It's time for Josh Allen. Kirk, it's time for Josh Allen to enter that fold of you should have some real questions about whether or not this guy, who is uber talented, can lead you to a championship, because every piece of evidence in the playoffs has shown you that he cannot. And I think we need to start having that discussion.
So first of all, petty little retweet sounds like an All-American Reject song. I thought about that while we were talking here. Jeremy, I've been kind of baking this take for a little while.
Sure.
We all agree that Josh Allen was remarkable in the divisional loss a year ago to Kansas City.
Right.
I think that everybody assumed that was him at Nirvana. That was him at the peak of his powers. And everybody assumed that was who he was all of the time. And he got that benefit of the doubt because this guy, this turnover prone dude, I don't want to say was always there, but he wasn't not always there. You know what I mean? Like this is the Josh Allen experience. And people kind of conveniently have overlooked that because I feel like sometimes if you can't win the Super Bowl, you want to lose in devastating fashion, because you become a martyr, you become a legend in that sense. Dez caught it. Believe me, I understand that more than anybody else. And I think that's what happened to Josh Allen. I think it's that mystique.
one team can win a year, and you have a lot of different disappointed teams every year, right? 31 teams are disappointed to an extent. And I think part of the favor of Allen is that he plays for such a lovable fan base. I love the Buffalo fan base. Like it's amazing. I mean, they are so passionate about their team. Jeremy, in Detroit, I would say the same thing. And that's why it's so easy to like these teams, because they haven't been able to have that success. And I think playing for Buffalo gives Allen a little bit of an out, in my opinion, Jeremy. I don't know if you'd agree with that, like from that Detroit standpoint as well.
I think Jeremy froze for a second. Either that, or he's like, he's really upset about.
I was like, man, I really made a point there. That
I think, Jeremy, did you stabilize with us, Jeremy? Are you back now?
I think so. Yeah. Are you hearing me?
Okay, there we go. We got you. I think.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I was going to add is that I do feel like the playoff sample size is still relatively low for Josh Allen. I mean, it's been 3 or 4 playoff appearances at this point, and I understand like that some people only get that, right. But the Bills are going to be around for a while. He'll have time to change that narrative. But Josh Allen was not very good down the stretch.
No.
Even going back to the regular season, the turnovers were definitely an issue all season. And so, yeah, I think that, and turnovers are really going to be the difference between, some of these mediocre teams and some of these elite teams. When you get into the playoffs, you can get away with it against some lesser teams in the regular season. But once you get to the playoffs, you need to play a really, really clean game. And Josh Allen, like you said, hasn't really proven that he can do that consistently.
If you're looking for some kind of, I think, excuse in a way, not excuses, I guess is the wrong term, but just what happened during the year that would make you think, okay, well, maybe he wasn't right. He really didn't look like the same quarterback after that elbow issue midseason. Yeah. It kind of looked like he was trudging along, and then
we're getting that 3,000 word story in the offseason, Pete. Like that's coming from someone, just so you're aware.
Yes, some kind of elbow issue or something. Yes,
I agree. My last take on the Bills is I think sometimes in some NFL seasons there are teams who act like they won the Super Bowl like in October and who act like it was theirs, like, and you can call it like a little bit of entitlement. And we kind of saw that from the Bills, like, and you kind of see that ripple into the fans. Like, Pete, I think the Chiefs had that, following the title season, right? Like this is ours. And how dare you assume that we're not going to win the Super Bowl? And the Bills kind of had that, yes. Which was a very, very far stretch from the like lovable, plucky underdog that's smashing into tables, whatever. A lot of, looking in the mirror that the Bills are going to have to do this offseason, I think. And obviously they dealt with the DeMar Hamlin situation, which really kind of rocked everything. And I think everyone's willing to understand that. But kudos to the Bengals. Jeremy, where do you want to go next? Pick one of the other 3 games.
I'll spare you, and let's go Eagles.
The Philadelphia Eagles.
Yeah, crushed. I don't know if that's really sparing you.
So like I do kind of think the Eagles had that same like energy, right? Like this is our Super Bowl, this is our title, and I do think that the Hurts, injury near the end kind of humbled them, and we saw the hunger sort of reawaken on Saturday night. Pete, I'm with you. I think the general take was like, oh man, I'm picking the Eagles, but I love the points in this game.
Yeah.
Just nothing, absolutely nothing from the Giants. I have no idea why Brian Daboll punted at the very end of this game. Like it was such a cowardly kind of overall performance, Jeremy. It felt like this was the Giants getting exposed for the frauds that a lot of people thought they were all season long.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what this was, and people are starting to get excited about their quarterback situation. But then you look back last week, and he played the Vikings. Daniel Jones, like every other quarterback that played that Minnesota Vikings defense this year, looked really good. And then when you come and play a legitimate defense in the Eagles, it all kind of falls apart there. And yeah, I as a fan of a team who beat the Giants on the road, I kind of had a feeling that they were frauds all along. And listen, they're in a good situation for the future. I don't want to take that away from them. They're a young team. They've got a bunch of young contributors on both sides of the ball there, but it just wasn't their time yet. Like I said, this is the separation here, where the Eagles are just a far better team with a far better roster. And no matter what Brian Daboll would have done in that game, and certainly it would have been nice to see him down 3 scores, maybe not punt the ball late in the game, but that probably wouldn't have made much of a difference. Probably wouldn't have made much of a difference in getting those points either. So yeah, this was just kind of a dominant performance by a team that was clearly much better than the other one.
You had 2 teams in this divisional round that should be overjoyed that they were even there. They weren't supposed to be. It was Jacksonville and New York. Yep. And New York was, in a way, a year ahead into what they were building. I think Brian Daboll did a fantastic job to even get them a playoff victory. And so, You have the Jags, you have the Giants. They're playing with house money to an extent, and they're just not in the same class as the Philadelphia Eagles. I mean, they're just not right now as far as a complete team. When you get steamrolled and it's a 28-0 lead, you're getting a 28-0 hole in the playoffs. I mean, I know we've seen some crazy things this year, but you're probably going to lose that football game. And they were able to get the first score of the second half, but by then it wasn't even really a game. It just was such a dominant performance early, and you're seeing why this is going to be a great Sunday of football. The Eagles are one of these four teams that, you look at all these four teams that I think the theme is they're pretty complete. I mean, each team is pretty complete that's left. And so, man, and this is what you want when you get to conference championship Sunday. There's going to be two very good teams that lose on Sunday are not going to get to play in the Super Bowl. Like there really is no, I guess, Cinderella in the standpoint. I guess if you want to sell me the 49ers because they're dealing with Mr. Irrelevant at quarterback, maybe that. But as far as just the rest of that team, it's again so complete. And I think you saw a team that is building and is on step one or step two, maybe a year ahead in the Giants. We'll see what they do with Daniel Jones and Saquon Barkley. But the Eagles are ready to win the title right now. And, a lot of that is Hurts and how he played, and certainly this defense.
This will shock both of you, but there were some Cowboys fans who weren't like super impressed with Jalen Hurts' performance. Just like kind of a ho-hum 154 yards, right? Like it wasn't like a game that like demanded like the most Jalen Hurts-y game of all time. But I think that speaks to their roster, right? Like, and that speaks to just who they are, right? Like they don't have to have. And that separates them from a lot of teams. I mean, Jeremy, that like sometimes it feels like you have to live in the hysteria like your team does, and everyone has to have their A+ game for you to win. That and I'm not even saying that Jalen didn't have an A+ game, but like it wasn't necessary. I mean, like It was just complete and total domination. It is so utterly annoying how every little thing they do looks to be genius. Like Giants cut James Bradbury, boom, we're gonna pick him up, boom, he's gonna have an interception in this game. Like it is so annoying. And that's the only one I can come up with as a Cowboys fan. They won 38-7 on the 5-year anniversary of beating the Minnesota Vikings 38-7. Granted, that was the NFC Championship game. At the time, the Houston Astros were reigning World Series champions. Like I would argue, and I will talk about this with Brandon on the mixtape this week, Jeremy, that the vibes are maybe the most strong with the Eagles of any of the four remaining teams. Like the Eagles kind of have the most positive energy their way, which again is incredibly annoying to admit.
Yeah, but it's got to be true. I don't know what team that had a more impressive performance except for maybe the Bengals this weekend. And you just have to think, I try to avoid all those like team of destiny things, but all those things you brought up, I mean, Boston Scott too. Can we talk about that guy? He has 15 postseason touchdowns and 10 of them have come against the Giants. It's insane.
This has got to be a really just, in a way, annoying Final Four for the rest of the league's fans, because all these teams have been involved in Super Bowls recently. It's like
it's 75% of the last Final Four, Pete. Like the only difference is the Eagles in over the Rams.
And the Eagles recently were able to win a Super Bowl. I mean, it's been a few years now, but they tasted it. So it's like, man, can we get someone else in this mix? And it won't happen at least till next year. So
do we have any big takeaways on the Giants besides the punt was stupid? They were like, this was kind of a like, where was Saquon? You know what I mean? Like, and I'm not saying, Jeremy, like, oh, they suck, like, let him walk now, whatever. But like, it's just so strange how some teams can be so good that the duo of Saquon and Jones that looked unstoppable a week ago was just completely and totally neutralized.
Yeah, but again, to me, it's all about context. And when you're going against the Vikings, Saquon Barkley can pop off. If you're going against an Eagles defensive front that's really, really good, it's going to be a lot harder. I truly believe in the trenches is really where the running game is won and lost. And so you can put the ball in the man's hands, but if there's nowhere for him to run, I don't know what you expect of him.
I think when we were talking to Ed last week, I'll keep this brief, RJ. I think we were talking to Ed last week. I mean, he was so sure, and I didn't blame him for this, that you got to bring back Jones, you got to bring back Barkley. But this performance was so bad that I think it creaks that door open a little bit again. And so we'll see what the Giants end up doing here. I think it was such an exclamation point against the Vikings, and this was one of the louder question marks that you could have had following that up. And so now I wonder where the Giants go.
I really don't want to do this, but we have to talk about the Dallas Cowboys and the fact that they lost again in the divisional round of the playoffs. I'll go last. Jeremy, you can go first. The Cowboys losing 12-19 to the 49ers.
Yeah, I mean, I hate to make it all about Dak, but it feels like this is a game where we have to talk about him seriously for a while here, because the first interception he threw was just
Awful.
completely awful. And the second one wasn't much better. When they're at the end of the game, the first throw I think he made in the 2-minute drill was a throw that should have been pick sixed and ended it. You want to talk about quarterbacks that haven't been able to prove themselves capable in the moment. Dak Prescott is that guy, and now he's going to cost you $30 million more in cap space in 2023. So this felt like maybe a window that the Cowboys had to really compete, and I don't know if it's still going to be open as soon as next year.
Yeah, this was a defensive game to close the weekend, and I just feel like when you're coming off of the super wild card round and Dak looks as good as he does, and you get into a situation and you're like, well, we're playing the Niners. I know that the Niners defense has been otherworldly, but I mean, you take 19 points, right? Like if you're Dallas, you're like, we can score more than 19 against San Francisco. We have Dak Prescott playing good ball, and it was kind of back to that questionable Dak, like we just talked about with Daniel Jones, where it's like, oh man, you're feeling really good, and man, a week and a game sometimes changes that narrative, and I think we're in store for a lot of those Dak questions again, which RJ, I imagine is going to be really annoying to have to deal with in Dallas.
That's the theme of the day, if it is an obvious annoyance.
Yes.
So I maintain that Dak is I don't know, top 10 quarterback, right? Put him wherever you want. Put him at 10, right? He has at times been an elite quarterback, right? But the reality of these moments are that they matter the most, right? Like you can say that's fair or not. A lot of people in my mentions like it is fair, and fine, maybe it is fair. Like this is the game. This is what you sign up for. That's why you're paid, whatever. These are the ones that people remember the most, and so there's nowhere to run for Dak, right? Like we can cite EPA per play and things like that, fair, true, objective data points, from throughout the regular season. But dude, at this point, like, there's a lot of data to suggest you can't get over this hump. Back-to-back years, you can't outduel Jimmy Garoppolo and Brock Purdy. And I know it's not about that, but it's a tough look. And you guys mentioned the interceptions. The first one, I still haven't decided how exactly I feel about that. Like, I mean, I'm at a point where it's like 98% minimum on Dak. Like I still, kind of need to digest that one. But the second one was so crippling. And I think, people will look at the last play of the game, which was just, I mean, why? Like you can't even spare us enough to have a peaceful end to all this. But the game was truly lost in my mind at the end of the first half. And I really thought the Cowboys, I thought they were going to steal the game right there. I mean, they had that fourth down that was, kind of short, and there was the Brett Maher situation, which everybody was obviously touch and go on. And I tweeted, I would have kicked that field goal. And so they decide to go for it on fourth down. Dak picks it up, and you're thinking like, holy crap, they are actually going to do it. They're going to get to the conference championship. They're going to Philly next week just to throw an interception. And then I don't even blame the Cowboys defense. I thought the Cowboys defense, maybe didn't pitch a perfect game, but did everything they could to slow down one of the hottest offenses in the NFL. And so that was, if you believe the Cowboys were going to score a field goal at least there, that was a 6-point swing. If you think they were going to score a touchdown, there was a 10-point swing in a game they lost by 7. And yeah, there were other moments they lost the game, but I can't sit here. Yeah, Trayvon Diggs dropped the interception, whatever. I can't put the blame more on anybody else than on Dak Prescott. I mean, there again, that phrase rings true in my mind, Jeremy. There is nowhere to run, nowhere to hide, and whether or not Dak is a good or elite or whatever quarterback, this is the face of it all now, is that you cannot do this, and that kind of becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy at some point.
There also felt like there was a turning point in this game in the 49ers second half touchdown drive, right? Because at that point it still felt like the Cowboys were very much in control of that game before that drive.
The Kittle tip, that was the kind of straw, I felt like. Yeah,
sure. And then there was also, and I don't want to make this about the refs, but they got into 3rd and 9, I think, down in the red zone, and then there was back-to-back defensive holding calls that extended the drive. If that's a field goal game, I think maybe the entire game plays out entirely differently. But I mean, that's why it feels like the Cowboys just kind of missed out on a big opportunity here, because for a lot of that game, they felt like the better team. They really, and they looked like the better team. They were controlling the 49ers on defense, and they weren't finishing drives, but they were getting down in there. And it was the interception to end the first half, and then finishing with a couple field goals in second half. But that, to me, it just felt like this was a really good Cowboys team that probably could have beaten the 49ers on the road if you play that game, 15 times, they probably win it 7 or 8 times, right down the middle. But now I don't know, looking towards the future, it looks a little rough for them. And given that a lot of the narrative is going to surround Dak Prescott, I can't imagine it's going to be a very fun offseason for them.
I think it was anxious for the Cowboys the whole time. I mean, you had 3 games this weekend, and this was the one to close where there was a lot of scoring, where this was just like pure sludge, like muddy,
Dude,
old game. It was like you knew that offenses couldn't do anything. And to Jeremy's point, that touchdown at the beginning of the fourth quarter, like, it had the feel of a game because the defenses were so sharp that if someone could break through for a touchdown, it was going to be really difficult for the other team to get back in. And that's kind of exactly how it played out. And I mean, I don't know how you felt. I know, what was it, 45 seconds with no timeouts? I felt hopeless. Like, sometimes I'll say, oh, 0% chance they're going to score. I'm like, there is a 0% chance Dak is going to get this done. Like, there's no way. And that ended up being the case.
Not to interrupt you, Pete, but like, I mean, and again, like, people will pick these moments and make it seem like that's the overall, but Dalton Schultz not fighting to get out of bounds. Like, you got to know that rule, dude. Like, I mean, and then Dalton Schultz
stepping out of bounds.
Lazily not completing the catch. Like, again, it's just, those are the little things. And those are the things that hold them back that, and the weird part is, and we're going to do a lot about this stuff at Blogging the Boys, but like, I'm paraphrasing or kind of like generalizing here, but over the last like 20 years, the Cowboys have the 6th most wins in the regular season. They're like the only team in the top 7 or whatever that hasn't won the Super Bowl. They're like the only team in the top 10 that hasn't even appeared in an NFC championship game. Like, it's very difficult to be this like good in the way they are without having the accidental like greatness of at least appearing in a conference championship game. Jeremy, I don't know if you saw my tweet a little while before we started. The last 3 playoff wins for the Cowboys, which dates back to, against your Lions. The quarterbacks in those games were Matthew Stafford. All right. That was obviously in 2014, Russell Wilson in 2018, and Tom Brady on Monday night. Those are the last 3 quarterbacks they beat in the playoffs. The last 3 they lost to, Jeremy, were Jared Goff, now current Lions quarterback, Jimmy Garoppolo, and Brock Purdy. Like, think, like, if you knew nothing else, if I just told you that information, you would think they would have won the Super Bowl at some point.
Yeah, and they haven't had bad defenses throughout that entire time either. That's what makes it so puzzling. And yeah, again, it just feels like a very much a lost opportunity of a season for the Cowboys. Which, I mean, like you said, it's kind of become their MO. They've had 12 playoff appearances in a row now without a conference championship appearance, which is I believe the longest streak in the NFL.
0-7 in their last 7 divisional playoff games, obviously. Meanwhile, the Chiefs are going to host their 5th straight. I mean, just how the other half lives. Pete, speaking of the other half, though, the Niners are back. And I hesitate to call them the most dangerous team in the NFL, but holy crap. Like, they're the kings of finding a way. Like, they are so good. Kyle Shanahan remains underrated and undervalued. I mean, they are such an incredible operation.
Yeah, I'm looking at this. The NFL will send out notes, and I thought this was interesting. The next gen stat of the game, the 49ers turned to zone coverage almost exclusively on Sunday, relying it on 94.7% of coverage snaps and recording 2 interceptions in zone coverage. The 2 picks pushed their total to 21 in zone coverage this season, including the playoffs, and that's the most in the league. And what that signifies to me is identifying a weakness in the Cowboys offense. And, I think there were questions because of how good the Cowboys defense looked last week. Could Brock Purdy get it done at some point, right? It's going to be midnight and he's going to turn into a pumpkin, right? And look, this wasn't this wild performance where he looked particularly great, but at the same time, I think the 49ers just like have this coaching staff that realizes it's not going to be easy to get this done with the rookie QB. So we got to rely on a good defensive plan. We got to keep the scores low. And, at some point we got to really rely on getting the ball into our skill guys in space. You had Elijah Mitchell that was a factor in the same. Christian McCaffrey. If you look at the receiving, you're going back to George Kittle, 5 for 95. And look, 19 points wasn't pretty, right? Or pretty. I walked myself into that one. But look, it was enough, right? It was enough. And I think that's just been the theme of the Cowboys the 49ers into their season. Has just been, look, it'd be great if we had Trey Lance. It'd be great if we had Jimmy G, but we have what we have, and we're not going to use that as an excuse. We're going to still go, beat the P out of this Dallas team with Dak Prescott, who you would have thought would have been able to win a quarterback duel like this.
I think they're so emblematic of a complementary football team. You know, it's a coachism, but it's absolutely what the 49ers do. They can run the ball, they can pass the ball, they can stop the run, they
Yeah.
can stop the pass. And if one of those falters, or if you lose a quarterback, the rest of the three can step up and make this a good football team and compete, and they can change strategies on a week-to-week basis because they are so deep at basically every position. So those are the most dangerous teams in the playoffs that can beat you so many different ways. And I think the Eagles are very much that team next for the next week matchup too. So it should be a fascinating matchup. That's the one I'm maybe of all the games in the playoffs, that's the one I'm looking forward to the most.
We all agree that Micah Parsons is among the best defensive players, maybe the best defensive player in the NFL. And the 49ers have beaten his defense, generally speaking, in back-to-back playoffs with Jimmy Garoppolo and Brock Purdy at quarterback. Like I don't have the energy to look it up anytime soon, but I can't think off the top of my head of any situation where a team beat another team in consecutive playoff years with different quarterbacks under center, which is what the Niners have done. Right, like we all acknowledge the Cowboys have had an amazing defense for the last 2 years, and the Niners have beaten them in the playoffs, both at home and on the road, with two, I don't want to say inferior quarterbacks, but we all kind of understand what the situation is here. Just a huge bummer. I don't know. I don't have anything else to say. But all right, let's get to the Chiefs, the stupid Chiefs, who all they do is win. It's dumb and stupid. Jeremy, the Chiefs are going to host the AFC Championship game for the 5th year in a row. They had a little bit of a scare. We're going to get an update from Pete on the Patrick Mahomes situation. Were you ever scared? Were you ever worried? I mean, this game finished 27-20, but did you ever feel like it was, out of control for the Chiefs against the Jaguars?
Not really. I mean, when I saw Chad Henne step on the field, the answer is yes. And that's coming from a Michigan grad myself. So, 37-year-old Chad Henne on the field should have scared the Chiefs, but the man drove 98 yards for a touchdown, and that's all. That was the difference in the game, technically. But no, it did feel again like the Chiefs were the clear better team, and credit to the Jaguars for sticking in this one as long as they possibly could. But the Chiefs are they're a different beast, and they're starting to look good. I think their defensive performance in this game was probably most impressive of anything else, because that's always been the question with this team, right? Is we know they have Patrick Mahomes, we know that they're constantly going to be number one in whatever offensive stat you want to throw out there. But can they defensively get the stops when they needed to? And listen, this was a really good Jaguars team that can score in a hurry sometimes. And listen, there were a couple turnovers late in the game that maybe the Jaguars, if they clean that up, maybe this is a closer game. Maybe even the Jaguars pull off the upset. But at the same time, it felt like if the Jaguars would have gotten one last counter punch in there, that the Chiefs would have delivered one final blow.
Yeah, this is a Jacksonville Jaguars team that is not going anywhere. I mean, I just think they're going to be the kings of the AFC South for a while now. Trevor Lawrence, to me, is the real deal. Doug Peterson, who came from Kansas City, won in Philly, is building something down there. And I think they're going to be an annoying team in the AFC for these quote-unquote contenders for a long time. They almost won this game. Now, I think a lot of that had to do with, Patrick Mahomes in the first quarter was cooking. I think he had 84 yards and was jump passing and doing his sidearm, and then all of a sudden he has his ankle landed on, and you were collectively, you had 7,000 people at Arrowhead holding their breath, because the thing was Mahomes, he's a player that to me is never going to leave that type of game, but then he was trying to walk, and it didn't really look like he could walk, and I'm like, well, if he can't walk, he's going to have to come out, and he did come out. I think the key to this game, as good as the Chiefs played all around, and I agree with Jeremy, was Chad Henne coming in on the 2-yard line and putting together a 98-yard drive for a touchdown cold. This guy did not play any spot starts. Came in for a couple snaps against the 49ers, a couple snaps against the Raiders in week 18. He has not had first-team reps all year. Mahomes has been pretty healthy this entire year. There have been moments where he might come in, but he didn't. To come off cold and to hit Travis Kelce with a strike, and to have a game plan too, where in that moment they switched their offense a little bit to rely on the running back a little bit more, and also use quick outs where Henne could just almost dink and dunk, 5 yards, and then he hits Travis Kelce down the field for a touchdown. Such a key part of the game, because it was 10-7. It was one of those feelings at Arrowhead where you're like, is this going to be another team that pulls off a stunning upset that happened last year? Now we know the Bengals are legit, but we didn't know that necessarily last year. And Henny got it to 17-7. And then eventually this was it, ended up being a 7-point game. So that was the key sequence. But I agree. I mean, this has been a Chiefs defense that's been young, and I think it's figuring out its identity right at the exact time you want it. And just like in the NFC, with those two teams who are clearly the best teams in the NFC, I feel like these are the two best teams in the AFC. And I think you have two coin flips next Sunday, which is really scary if you're a fan of any of these teams, but should be a good Sunday worth of football. And I could easily see any combination of all four of these teams reaching the Super Bowl.
Jeremy, if you look at the non-quarterbacks associated with the Final Four, there are obviously a lot of talented players, but it feels like each one has like a dude who's going to make like an X factor sort of play. There's a lot of low-hanging fruit on the Bengals. Right now, I kind of feel like Trey Hendrickson's that guy. Like, I kind of really trust Trey Hendrickson to have like a big moment for the Bengals at some point. AJ Brown's sort of that dude for the Eagles. You obviously look at I thought Fred Warner was amazing on Sunday for the 49ers. Again, they have a lot of players to choose from, but Travis Kelce is that dude for the Chiefs. What was it, Pete? 14 catches? I mean, like, it is so unfair, Jeremy, that like they can lose Tyreek Hill and it can only like make Travis Kelce stronger.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. Isaiah Pacheco too, like he had a crazy game too. But yeah, Travis Kelce just I don't understand how he does it. Nothing about what he does on the field looks miraculous. But I guess that's kind of the tight end position, right? It's just like sloppy, gritty play, and he's just the king of it. He's always open, even when he's not open, and he's always going to break that first tackle and get that extra yard or two that turns into a first down, that turns into a touchdown. And I mean, he's definitely, if he's not already in it, like he's in greatest of all time territory. He really is.
Yeah, and I don't think he's slowing down. I mean, that's what's been the most amazing thing. He's 33, but if there's one position as far as skill guys go that can really have production as you get a little bit older, it's these big old tight ends that have that old man strength when they become 33 and 34. Travis Kelce doesn't want to stop. I mean, I know we look at his yardage and we say, like, there's no possible way he reaches Tony G, but I don't know if that's true. Like, I mean, he's fascinating to watch. I've had conversations with him before, and he has told me, I never want to stop playing. And so if he does go another 6 years, let's say until he's about 38, 39, yeah, I don't expect these 1,200 yard seasons, but that might be enough to get him to be the most productive tight end of all time. I know that a lot of people are going to hold on to you got to block too. And look, he's not as good of a blocker as a Rob Gronkowski or George Kittle. But as far as the best weapon at tight end ever, I mean, I think he's already in that territory. And I think as these years go on, I don't think he wants to stop. And I think he'll work with Kansas City on staying there for a little bit less money that he might make on an open market, even at the age of 33, 34. And so we'll see what happens in the career of Travis Kelce. But you're right. It's a guy that everybody knows the Chiefs want to utilize. It's a guy that they want to throw to. And regardless of that, regardless of any plan or extra attention, he produces 2 touchdowns, the 14 catches, which sets a single game postseason record for a tight end, and the 98 yards.
Pete, what's the latest on Mahomes and the high ankle sprain?
Yeah, there was an MRI. It was thought to be pretty quickly that there was no break, which is the good news, because had there been a fracture, it would have been Henny time, baby, against the Bengals. And I don't know if that would have been all that fun to watch. But what I see is Mahomes and having a high ankle sprain. He's actually played through something like this before. If you remember their Super Bowl season in 2019, he got it at high ankle sprain in week 1. He wasn't the same quarterback that entire year, and he really didn't feel like he healed his ankle until he had to miss 2 games for another reason. You're getting deep into like Chiefs storylines, but he had the dislocated kneecap, and that actually
right. That was was that a Thursday game that he suffered that against the Broncos? Okay.
He had to miss 2 games, which equates to 3 weeks, and that's when his high ankle sprain finally felt better. So what I would tell you is you're going to get Mahomes, and he's going to play through this high ankle sprain, and they're going to shoot it up or whatever they have to do, wrap it up, do the spat. He's not going to be 100%. I mean, that's just reality. I'm not trying to pre-make an excuse for the Chiefs. I think you're probably going to get between like a 70 and 80-ish% Patrick Mahomes. The good news for the Chiefs is a 70 to 80% worth of Patrick Mahomes is probably better than most quarterbacks in the NFL. The problem is you're going to be playing somebody probably not he doesn't fall into that category. 100% Joe Burrow is certainly going to be a quarterback advantage over what would be an 80% of Mahomes. And so it's going to have to be a little bit more complete. Patrick Mahomes, I think, is going to have to limit his scrambling, which he likes to do, especially when the protection is bad and the coverage is sometimes good downfield and his guys are not getting open. So it changes the game a little bit for the Chiefs. But if there's anyone I think who can figure this out on the fly, it's Andy Reid. And I think that Chad Henne drive showed you a little bit of what they may do. And Jeremy said this with Isaiah Pacheco. Pacheco's really emerged as a guy where I think he's ready for this moment now, and you could create a little bit more of a balanced offense than pass heavy, just given the fact that Mahomes is not going to be the exact same player he is in the AFC title game here.
It's Monday, so we all reserve the right to change, but preliminary picks for Championship Sunday. Jeremy, you're first.
I got to go with the two teams that look the most impressive this weekend. I got to go with the Bengals, especially with the Mahomes injury as it is, and then I got to go with the Eagles. I think those are maybe the two most well-rounded teams that's really become kind of the identity of these teams that make deep runs. It's not just about having a good offense, it's about having a good defense, it's about having good run games, and I just think these two teams can beat the other teams in so many different ways. And like you both have said, I do kind of view both these games as coin flips. But if I had to go with the teams that are the hottest right now, that maybe the injuries favor, I'm going with the Bengals and their beat up offensive line. We'll see if that holds. And just an Eagles team that looks like they're going to roll through everybody that they face.
Peter, you're picking the Chiefs, and who else?
Yeah, the Bengals are feeling themselves a little too much right now.
Oh,
They were humble last year. That humility is gone. I'm going to go with Kansas City. The Bengals would beat the Chiefs 3 times in a row. Eventually, I think it's got to go the other way. They're just too.
If you want to talk about eventually going the other way, I'm here to tell you that might not be the case. So.
You get the home game, surprise home game. I think a lot of people were thinking they were going to have to travel to Atlanta, and so hopefully that for Kansas City and that provides the Chiefs a little bit of an advantage. I can't pick against the Chiefs. I'll go with the Chiefs, and I will lean into the Andy Reid, Kelsey New Heights Bowl of the Chiefs and the Eagles meeting up. If I'm right there, it's a shame that this didn't happen. What was, a few years ago when I think there was a little bit more juice to the Andy Reid Eagles thing. He's kind of really established himself as the man in red with the big red mustache at this point. But I think this would be a fun matchup. The two of were the top MVP candidates the whole year going at each other. I keep saying it, and I said something has to give with the Chiefs losing to the Bengals all these times. Man, at some point, Brock Purdy's got to lose, right? Like, he's not going to win the Super Bowl as Mr. Irrelevant. It's hard for me to pick the 49ers in that sense, but I keep saying the same thing every week. That's why I picked the Cowboys last week. And RJ, as you know, that didn't go my way. Anyway, long story short, Chiefs and Eagles.
I think that's the matchup the NFL wants, right? Like the Andy Reid Bowl, the New Heights Bowl, right? Like, I think you get the MVP versus like the player who would have won the MVP if not for the injury. Like the story, we could find a lot of storylines for any of the combinations here. This has been a weird NFL season, like kind of a left-footed one, at least, as far as what we're used to. So I could see the Bengals and Niners both being like, oops, sorry. Like you wanted Chiefs and Eagles. Like, we're here and we're going to throw it back to the 80s. I think we get the, if Brock Purdy is Mr. Irrelevant, and I understand why, if there is a Mr. Relevant, it is Joe Burrow. Like, Joe Burrow is the most relevant, most cool, most calm, most collected. Like, he is, if I trust one single thing in the entire Final Four, it is Joe Burrow finding a way. Sorry, Pete, but and I think that I could see a Joe Burrow win, inviting is he really the king? Because he's now been to 2 Super Bowls. Patrick Mahomes has been to 2 Super Bowls. He's 4-0 against him, 2-0 in conference title games. Both those wins in Kansas City. There has to be a foil. But at the very least, I'm happy that Burrow has finally lived up to give Mahomes a proper adversary in the way that Josh Allen obviously has not been able to.
It's been a while now, and look, it's annoying. I get it, but Patrick Mahomes has been the face of the NFL. That fake title or whatever is on the line on Sunday. I'm willing to admit that if Joe Burrow beats him again, this will be the 4th time, 2nd time in a big spot, especially the way it happened last year.
It's the biggest spot possible for them to be. So it's not the biggest in the world, but it is the biggest possible spot they could meet in against one another.
I think and you go to the Mahomes side, I know quarterbacks don't play each other, and that's always something that we need to be reminded about. Quarterback wins aren't stats, but I mean, that idea of the face of the NFL is certainly on the line in this game. I mean, it really is. It really is. I think Mahomes could lean back into that if the Chiefs are able to win. And like you were saying, I agree. I think Burrow becomes that guy if the Bengals are able to go to back-to-back title game or Super Bowls.
I just like if they're like I know I've said if this a lot, but if there are two teams I would not bet against, like the Bengals, like we don't care where we have to go, we don't care we got we didn't get a chance to host
They'll
these
play in a
playoff
parking
games.
lot.
Yeah,
Play in
like
a
they're the
McDonald's
ultimate like parking
if they
lot
have
team,
to.
and in a
Yes.
different way, that's who the Niners are. We don't care who the quarterback is. We
Right.
don't care what's going on. Like they are the sludge teams like more than anybody else. I really wanted to see Bengals Niners last year, and we obviously didn't get it. So I hope that is the case this time. Rachel, could you please grace us with your presence and let us know 3 things? Number 1, your biggest takeaways from the weekend worth of action. 2, your picks for conference championship Sunday, and of course your pick for the MF Dumble MVP. Jeremy, of course we do have a Monday Football Monday MVP around here. Rachel is the empress. I don't know if empress is a word, but she gets to decide who wins.
Okay, so my picks for next weekend, I'm gonna go Eagles, Chiefs. I think that's what I want to see most. My biggest takeaway, RJ, you kind of touched on this a little bit, how you saw with both the Eagles and with the 49ers, even though they had dominant wins, you didn't see like stellar performances from all of their impact players. So you already kind of touched on how we didn't see too much from like AJ Brown. He only had 3 receptions for 22 yards.
Right.
And also running back Christian McCaffrey, he didn't have like his best performance in
Debo either. Yeah. Right.
Yeah, because I saw like the wide receivers, Debo, Brandon Ayuk, and Jennings, they only combined for 8 receptions on 13 targets for 97 yards. So of course, like
Make
the
me
tight
feel
end-
worse, Rachel. Thank you so much.
Sorry. So that was my
Defense
biggest
played
takeaway.
well. Yeah.
Yeah, the defense played well, but
Mhm.
that was interesting to see. So it's going to be even more exciting next weekend because I feel like we're going to see them back to their complete ways. Both teams. The best takes that I had heard today, Pete, I loved your bold take on Josh Allen and how
Yeah. No one wants to say it. I'll say it.
that was
We
good.
all said it. What do you mean no one?
Nobody
we
wants to say
spent
it. I'll
10
say
minutes
it.
saying
Pete
it.
said it first.
I'll
Pete
say it.
started
Yeah,
it.
Pete
He
said
just
it.
threw
Yeah.
it out there, and
Yeah.
both of you guys were like, whoa. So that was
Mm,
great. I love the
yeah.
conversation starter.
Wow.
Jeremy, I loved how you talked about separation and how like that was like the word to describe this past weekend. So that was a really good point for you. And RJ, you had a similar point that I did. But today I'm gonna give it to Pete. I think he did.
Whoa. Wow.
Everything's coming up, Pete.
I was not expecting that because Rachel, we
Yes.
love us some Rachel, but she's
Look
a
at
nice
this.
gal.
Look,
She
remember this, Rachel. He's about to
She
insult
likes-
you. Go ahead.
she likes to spread the love around, and I think sometimes we go with the new faces that are here. And I messaged RJ. I said it's going to be Jeremy, 100%. So this is a pleasant surprise, and I will take it. And what a start to my Monday! I feel like an underdog that was able to pull it out. And again, thank you to the parents. I always got to thank the parents for blessing me with these hot takes here.
She's just
Jeremy,
she's
do you feel like
dangling
this
the-
was fair?
She's dangling the carrot for me so that I come back next week a little bit more prepared, a little bit more. Yeah, I got it. I'll bring a little more hot takes.
I don't
Yeah.
think it's a coincidence that Rachel picked the person who had the same Super Bowl pick as her. Like, because Jeremy, you didn't pick Eagles Chiefs. You picked Eagles
Oh,
Bengals.
yeah.
I picked Bengals
Yep.
Niners. Rachel and Pete are simpatico. They went Eagles Chiefs. So, wow. I gotta say, Jeremy and I were both robbed. I think even John was robbed. I think Pete was the least deserving of anyone who's had a voice on this episode. So,
Not fair. Not fair.
wow. As we close, Jeremy, I would like you to tell the audience about the video game I saw you Twitch and dance along to, please, and everything that kind of happened. I would just like to hear that story because I'm curious about it, but it's a good way for us to
Sure.
leave.
Oh yeah, at Pride of Detroit, we partake in Movember, where I grew out a mustache and we raise a whole bunch
Yeah.
of money. We raised, I believe, about $27,000 this year, and one of the goals was if we hit a certain benchmark, I would play the Just Dance video game with my nieces while they were over here for Christmas. So for about an hour on our Twitch channel, twitch.tv/Pride of Detroit, I was dancing like a madman and almost had a heart attack. It was. I didn't realize how much cardio that video game was, but yeah, no, it was a little fun little thing. So next Movember, head over to Pride Detroit. We do a bunch of fun stuff for the month.
I have something to tell you guys. It's kind of breaking news personally right now. I have this right here. You know what this is? Jury duty for next Monday, and I tried to get out of it because of the obvious reasons, and I was just denied right here. So I don't even know if I'm going to be here next year or next week, even after what could potentially be a Chiefs AFC title victory. So I'm happy to take the MF double MVP. And I think Jeremy's going to have to hold down the fort next week. Jury duty. I can't get at him, so I don't get arrested. So thank you
Look
to
at
Kansas
that,
City
Rachel.
for this.
You gave this to someone who's going to tuck and run. I hope you feel
Yeah.
satisfied, Rachel. All right.
I
So,
cannot believe I'm going into jury. AFC title is not a good enough excuse in Jackson County, Kansas City, everybody. So keep that in mind.
Wow. Pete, send us home with whatever you want to say. The floor is yours.
Okay. I guess I'll stay on this horse. I think if you are at Arrowhead and you witness an AFC title and want to talk about it, you should be able to get out of jury duty. And so I don't know what laws need to change. I don't know who you need to contact.
Rachel, let's leave, please. Let's just get out of here. It's stupid.
Power to the people. Power to the people.